Well, good afternoon. My name is Mr. Rogers, Jeff Rogers. You probably have all received at least an email from me regarding work-based learning. And I started doing this a couple years ago. I like to have a parent-student orientation in the spring just because I want everybody to know all the expectations and all the requirements. You'll hear me say this many, many times. Work-based learning, it is a class, but it is different from any other class. And as we go through the orientation, you'll hear how it is different from any other class. The biggest reason that it's different is that their classroom could be located off campus, at a business, at a doctor's office, at an automotive dealership, whatever their interest is in. And I still have some students that when they make it to the orientation, they don't completely understand how work-based learning works, but it's like the old work-study program. Students are leaving campus going somewhere, and they are going at all times during the day. I have students, and it depends on where work-based learning fits in their schedule. So I have some that are doing it in the morning. We have some that are going in the afternoon. I've even had some students, now if we know enough, if we plan ahead, I even had one student this year that we put all of her required academics on one day. So that meant one day for her was completely open, and she would go to a vet office from 8 in the morning till about 1 in the afternoon. So we can do a lot of creative stuff, and we can do that in the springtime. What I always tell parents and students is I'd rather you know what's expected now, and when this meeting is over, I really want y'all to go home and talk. And the question that I hope comes up is, do you feel like you can do work-based learning? Do you feel like you can meet all those requirements? If you feel like you can't, it's much easier to change schedules now, to pick up another class, to get into a class that you would prefer to get. Because if you try to change schedules in August, it's a lot more difficult, and sometimes you get stuck in classes that you may not necessarily want. Luckily, the only reasons, the biggest obstacle that parents run into or they see for students is really the transportation. And so we'll talk about that and stress that. But I think in the years past, I've had, less than 5 students each year will come to me and say, I don't feel like I can do this. And then a lot of times they're juniors. The junior year is kind of a tough year because they're trying to finish up all their required academics. And what I'll tell students is, if you can't do it because either you don't have room or you've got too much going on, if you met the criteria as a junior, you'll meet the criteria as a senior, and many of them have come back their senior year, they got a little more room in their schedule and it fits better. But I just want everybody to know what's expected up front. We've worked really, really hard. We have some good business sites, some good partnerships. The students that we've had in the program have set the bar high. And so I just want to make sure everybody understands what's expected, so when the new group comes in, we meet those expectations and continue to raise the bar. So that's kind of what I want everybody here. Feel free at any time, if you have a question, stop me. Even though we're video, and this is just so I kind of have this on tape in case I cannot meet with a parent or student. I had one parent contact me because they couldn't come to an afternoon. I added a morning session. So I'm meeting tomorrow at 7:30, and we're going to do a kind of a very short, abridged group meeting from 7:30 to about 8:10. And I had somebody else say that they're going to pick that one up. So thank y'all for coming. I know that April and May are busy times of the year. I know I've had 3 banquets, 3 weeks in a row of banquets and after-school activities, so thank you for coming. This information that you're going to hear is important, and it's important, and it's things that you need to go home and talk about and see if this is something you can do. And I hope that they all, after the meeting and after tonight, y'all discuss, want to continue. If you feel like you cannot continue, contact me. But if you want to continue in the program, you don't need to do anything else. And so I'll be kind of reaching out to the students and talking about placements, okay? I'm just going to go down through my list. That way, if I don't go down to my list, I might forget something. I want to make sure that I hit everything. But feel free. If you have a specific question, feel free to stop me, okay? Before you leave, I think most of you came in and did this, make sure that you sign in and I get credit that you were here, because I tell all the students is that I will not work on your placement. In other words, I won't place them at a site until I have record that the student and the parent they've attended one of these meetings. Okay, so please make sure you do that. Also, check the email and the phone numbers. Email is a very, really a critical way for me to contact everybody. just because, and the way work-based learning works, I have 100 students. I don't have them in a class. I don't see them on a regular basis. Now, the first week of school, I will meet all students. They will meet with me the first 3 time periods, and we'll basically go over everything about work-based learning. The second week, they start going out to their job site. After that, we will meet a few times throughout the year. We'll have planned meetings where they come to me instead of their job site. But email is a way that I can give a lot of information. And since we're on that topic, parents, I email students probably once a week. I will not email them without blind copying you, because I want you to know, I want you to be in the loop. I have learned, this is my 18th year teaching, many of it's been at the high school level, and I have learned that students do not always go home and tell their parents everything, okay? And so, so this is a way that you know, because, yeah, so this is a way that you know what's going on, because work-based learning, it's a class, but it's different. As they're going out to that job site, there's a whole lot of freedom. With that freedom comes a lot of responsibility. And they'll see that we've got to make sure that they're getting where they say they're going, they're there safely, and then they get back to either their home school or home and safe, being safe. And a lot of the supervisors at the job site, they're expecting good communication, because if the student doesn't show up and the business person is expecting them, they'll contact me because they're going to be worried. They don't want a student getting hurt coming to them. So and we'll talk about communication with the supervisor too. So, but those are things that the student has to be aware of. That's what's expected. It is a class. It is not a study hall. It is not okay. I've got something going on. Your work-based learning period is not a time to schedule tests to make up other things. It's not a time to every time you need to go to the doctor's appointment to go. Schedule, that's when you do your doctor's appointment or your hair or your whatever you need to do. It's a class. In fact, many of the businesses, they may have stricter attendance policy than our school system. This is like a job setting. And while I tell the students, and I actually sit down with all the supervisors and we have training sessions, I remind them that they're high school students, they're part of the process. They're trying to show the students this is what's expected on a job site. And in some of the students actually have the chance to get little paying jobs. And then when the company starts to pay the student, if they do, then that kind of takes it to a new level. Because now they can say, I'm paying you. This is what's expected, okay? And so this is a good job training, career exploration type program. So as I go down, we talk about placements. Let me just give you a quick overview of how you came to this point. I actually go into all career tech classes. I go in and do little presentations. Many of the students, they were in a class and they got to hear the presentations. Some of them may have heard me in multiple classes. I went into over 150 career tech classes. I presented the work-based learning program to over 2,000 students. And so every high school student has an opportunity to get into work-based learning. It's up to them. This is a class, but it's different because they have to apply for it. So they have to fill out an application. They basically tell me about what they want to do, and one critical part is transportation. But then they have to get a recommendation from their career tech teacher, that's the teacher that sees them, and then their counselor. The counselor really just tells me if they're on track to graduate, tells me about kind of the coursework that they've taken, and kind of gives me an update on their GPA. I put a lot of stock into the career tech recommendation form because they know how the student performs in class. And I tell the teachers, be honest, because if this student's going out to a business partner that may be on their advisory committee, they're representing you, RCA, and work-based learning. And I'll have some career tech teachers that say, no, they're not ready yet. And so I tell them to be honest. If they're not ready, they're not ready. So if your student has made it to this point, that means they turned in the application, they got a favorable recommendation from their counselor and a favorable recommendation from their career tech teacher. From there, we then try to get it on their schedule. We're actually, Heritage High School is the last school, they kind of go in order. Heritage is the last school that's finishing up registration. And they should have been called in and they either have it on their schedule or they left room in their schedule. Maybe they're waiting to hear back from me, but what I do is I give them a list. All these students are approved. Once I get finished with all my meetings, I'm going to go through, pull everybody's schedule, look to make sure it's on there. If we need to make any adjustments, I'll contact the schools. If we need to, we'll contact student and work through there. So apply, get approved, get it on their schedule, come to a student-parent orientation. And once we have this orientation and you want to continue forward, then at that point, I'll start working on placements. When I say the word placement, that's when I'm picking or deciding where they're going to be at based on what they've said in their application. Sometimes I'll pull them in, have a conversation, see what their interest is, and then from there we'll start working on where they're going to be at. The placements, I actually work on the placements May, June, and July. So I'll spend all summer working on those placements, going to the businesses, setting up orientations with them, and training. A lot of those are one-on-one. This past school year, I had over 60 business partners. So over the summer, I went and spent probably 15 to 30 minutes with each business person, talking about what we require of them. What they are required to do is fill out evaluations on the student, help me develop kind of a plan that they're going to use what they're going to be studying and learning on the job site, and then just fill out some other documents. And so they have to agree to allow me to also come in and visit. During the course of the year, I go visit students on the job site. My goal is always to visit once a month, depending on what's going on in the school year. Sometimes it's a little harder than others, but I'm required to visit twice a semester, which is really once every 9-week grading period, which I'm able to do that. So right at 100 students, that's about the maximum students I could probably handle and really provide good customer service to all the supervisors. Because I don't want to spread myself too thin, because if there's an issue, they call me and then I come running. I go because that's what I do. I'm not confined to the classroom. I'm a full-time job supervisor and kind of maintain the work-based learning program. So that's what I do. Their placement is really determined by what's their interest, what is their skill set, and how much time and availability they have in their schedule. That usually determines, because I've worked with some business partners over the last few years, and some of them are very specific and they're looking for things. As I look at the student application and talk to the student, from there I kind of start tentatively placing students. Each business is a little bit different. Some businesses will say they completely trust my judgment, and I will just assign a student to a business. I'll let them know, and they'll start that in the fall, in August. Some of the businesses like to have a group of students and put them through a little interview process so they can select one or two, or however many they want. Some of them, even if it's one student, they'll put the student through an interview process just to kind of put them through it, so it's kind of a learning process. So every little business is different. What I'll do from here, I'll contact the student and I'll kind of let them know. I tell all the students, give me 2 weeks, let me get through all of these meetings, and I don't mind if they start to contact me in a couple weeks and asking, where are we on my placement? And so some of them will develop real quick. Some of them, it takes me a while to kind of get everything assigned, because I have to it's easy just to kind of work through program by program. And I am starting with healthcare first, because that's my largest. Because I have so many healthcare students, I'm calling all of them in. I'm actually having a sit-down interview with each healthcare student to determine where's the right place. What I have learned, I would rather take my time, make the process, go through it slowly, May, June, and July, to get it right the first time. Because I'm not just going to assign somebody there, because I know students. I try to match up student personalities, availability, and even business personalities. I have some businesses that are very strict and very demanding, and they're specific on what they want. Well, I'm going to go through the students and give them what they're looking for. I've learned if I will do that, it's a better experience for the business, it's a better experience for the student, for me as the advisor, and you as the parent. Okay? And parent, I want to thank you, because a lot of times this is a big commitment on the student, but sometimes it's a big commitment on your part, especially if you're the one providing transportation or something like that. So parents, that's something that I want to thank you, and I acknowledge that a lot of times you're a big part of the program too. Students, one part of the application is they have to tell me their transportation plan. A plan could be they drive. And they joke when I ask this, a lot of times they'll say, I drive. And I'll say, so you have a car that I can go out there and physically touch, and they all kind of laugh. But I have to say that because everybody kind of has a plan. It's got to be a plan that's dependable. If they drive, that's great. I have some sites that will specifically say, give me somebody that drives. Because if they're there at the end of the day, the business may not want to be there waiting on a student. Okay, that's a lot for them to ask if they're waiting beyond the work hours on that student. They're not going to leave the student, but that's putting them as an inconvenience. So some of them will say, give me somebody that drives. Some of them it doesn't matter. So some students drive, some students have plans that consist of parents picking them up and taking them. I have grandparents, they're part of the plan. I have siblings part of the plan. I even have some students that take their parents to work, come to school, do their thing, and then go back and pick them up. Whatever works for that family is okay with me. We just have to have a good plan in place. One plan that I do not like is when students say they're going to depend on their friends. Friends will let you down, and what happens if your friend doesn't take you and you don't go to your site? Well, it could mean your grade. It could also mean your placement. It could be somebody could get upset and you could get fired from your work-based learning placement. Typically, it's going to be tied to communication or transportation issues. Those are the number one reasons why students are losing their placement. And so we got to make sure everything's kind of set. One thing I like to say is students, I'm hoping that are in work-based learning for the work experience. I cannot guarantee a paid position. Right now, of the 82 students that are in work-based learning, 25 of those students have paid positions. And I can kind of tell you the positions. We have some in healthcare, but those are paid by a grant. I have some automotive paid positions. I have some manufacturing paid positions. I have kind of a marketing paid position. I've had an IT paid position. Each year that kind of changes. It's based on student skill set, student availability, and sometimes just down to the economy. When things get slow, sometimes paying somebody minimum wage may be the first thing to go. As things pick back up, there may be opportunities for students. But if there's an opportunity for a paying position, then believe me, I'll work with that student and we'll try to put them in that position. Okay? So, but if students come to me and they say, I need one of those paying positions, I always tell them, I cannot guarantee that. Now, if something comes up, for example, I had a student who was an IT student this year, he started off as an intern in an unpaid position. He interned August and September. A job opportunity at Acuity Brands came open in October. We set him up in an interview. He went over. He got the interview. Okay, he got the job. All right, so that came up, and so he's been working at Acuity Brands from October till now. And really, what worked out, it started off as a temporary position, but he got in there, has done a good job, and they've kept him on till now. And so those things happen. Okay. Acuity Brands Lighting Center off Lester Road. It used to be where they manufactured light bulbs and light fixtures. Now it's more of a distribution in a warehouse. But they're bringing a little bit of manufacturing. But it's one of the top 5 or 6 employers in Rockdale County. So it's a big location. Yes, Lithonia Lighting. Yes, Lithonia Acuity Brands is kind of the big company, but Lithonia Lighting is one of it. Yes, sir. So that's just kind of on placements. Any questions just dealing with placements or anything like that?
Placements don't occur in summer.
Each year I will have some placements that begin, and typically those are the paying positions. I have not in the past had a whole lot of students that really kind of gave up their placement for an internship. I have had some students start in July, but not for the entire summer. So the earliest, unless somebody's getting paid, they'll typically start in August, maybe in July if somebody wants to get a head start, but we could look into that.
So students are in a position now, aren't they graduating from high school?
They are graduating, but many of them may finish out through May. I have had some that even if they're interning, sometimes when they graduate, they kind of get asked to kind of work through the summer and they pay a little bit. So some of the students will kind of work through the summer, and it's kind of good that when they're getting ready to go off to college, then the new group kind of comes in, and a lot of times they'll train the incoming student. So that's worked out well in the past too.
When do you find out or where you're placed?
We're actually, I'm going to, after these meetings, I will begin that. And so I'll pull in students, healthcare students I'm interviewing with, everybody else I'll kind of meet and kind of have some informal interviews, and I will begin to do that. Some students it may take through the summer, but I make sure I go slow through the process so I can do it right, okay? So if you have any other specifics, we can talk afterwards, okay? As far as grading, I kind of want you to see how the grading's broken down. The way I like to explain work-based learning grading, there's a lot of responsibility grades. Turning in a time card, making sure that your evaluation has been turned in by your supervisor, following up, communicating with me, the coordinator, and your supervisor. This is not an AP course like work. It's not that kind of work. It's turning stuff in. It's making sure that this is completed, communicating with me type grades. Students that are well organized tend to do very well. Students that need a little help with organization, they kind of struggle a little bit until they get it together. I mean, so you have to kind of keep up with stuff. We don't have written tests and exams and things like that. Our exam that they're getting ready to turn in on Friday of this week is actually a portfolio that students are putting together. It's really kind of a highlight of everything they've done over the year. And I was very specific and gave them exactly slide by slide what to put. And it's more of gathering photos at their job site, talking to their supervisor, gathering stuff. What are their post-secondary or what are their plans after high school, and kind of putting that in their PowerPoint. So it's not difficult coursework. But you can see the largest percentage of the student grade comes from their employer or their supervisor. Each month, the supervisor fills out an evaluation, basically showing up on time, following instructions, being dressed properly, using your time wisely, those categories that relate directly to their work experience. Another part of that is time card. The student, this is a test grade, but this is not really a test. Each month the student has a timesheet that I have created. They log their hours. At the end of the month, they get it signed by their supervisor. They turn that in to me for a test grade. So that's a pretty easy test grade. The hardest part is remembering it. But when we get down to communication, the student will not lack for information. So, and I'll show you how much I communicate with them. So that's part of their grade. Their PowerPoint is really their exam. That's about 20% of their grade. Work ethics. You might say, well, what's work ethics? How are you graded on that? In the fall, I will have for everybody a 30-page student parent handbook that goes through in detail on everything. Everything's broken down. The work ethic category is basically the things that they should be doing on the job site. And there's kind of some violations. The number one reason when students lose points in this category, they will start with so many points. If they commit one of these violations, then they lose points. Most of my students are still sitting at the same points because they know that if I do this, this is going to happen. The number one reason why students lose points goes to attendance and communication. Students, this is how this is different from any other class. If a student's in automotive and you wake up and you're sick, do you have to call Mr. B and tell him you're not coming that day?
No.
But now, this year you don't.
No.
The next time you go to class, you just tell Mr. B, hey, I'm here. What did I miss?
Yeah.
In work-based learning, if you wake up and the student is physically able, okay, they just wake up and they don't feel good, they are to communicate either by email, phone call, or text and notify their supervisor that they're not coming in to work. The next thing they should do is contact me. Contacting me by text is always appropriate. That's one thing we'll do the first week of school. I will give them my work cell. I'll have them text me with their number, and then now that is a form of communication that we will use a lot. But they should contact their supervisor. Now, I have 100 students. How I typically find out they didn't contact their supervisor is sometime during that day that supervisor will contact me when they don't show up. Mainly because they're worried. Hey, so-and-so, are they okay? And so that's how I find out. So I always tell students, if I find out you didn't let them know you weren't going to be there, then you lose points from the work ethics. That's the number one reason why students lose. If they're doing something or misbehaving, if they were to get fired for doing something that's not appropriate, they lose points in that category. Okay? So that's a biggie. Classroom assignments, activities and meetings. Students, know that every time we have a meeting, find the roll sheet, find the sign-in sheet, because that's my record that you were in that meeting. You get a grade. If this were a work-based learning meeting next year, you would get a grade for being here. If you're here, you get 100. That's an easy grade. If you signed in. Sign in, okay? And then as far as hours, for every work-based learning period you have to average 5 hours per class. So one class, 5 hours a week. 2 classes or 2 periods, 10 hours a week. And then if you had 3, it would be 15. And what they're doing, most of the students are getting their hours during that period. So if it's 8th period, they will go to the job site during that period. Some of them may go beyond 3 o'clock, but most of my students are done at 3 o'clock. They go during their period. Now, if it's something that turns into a job, then students may go longer. I got a young man that goes to Courtesy Forward. He has 7th and 8th period work-based learning. He gets out every day about 1:15, but he goes to work Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday from 2 to 6. That's his job, and they're paying him. And he works half a day on Saturday. Now, he's getting paid, so he's more than willing.
Exactly.
He's more than willing to go. But a lot of students will say, hey, I just want to learn, I want to do it. But after a while, if a student's not getting paid, then they're not going to be willing to give that many hours. If a business is going to the student and trying to encourage them to give more hours, I always tell the students, be careful. I don't want you to give too many hours. If they want you, let's just say you have one period and you're given, 7 to 8 hours, but if they all of a sudden say, you're doing great, can you come for 15 to 20 hours? That's where I'll step in and say, if they're doing that good of a job, can we talk about some money? And I'll be the negotiator. Okay, so we want to show how good they are, but we don't want to give too much. Okay, and that's where I come into play. I'll go to bat for the students. Also, if there's ever an issue, I ask the students to talk to me. Let me know. I'm the person. Let me go in because I set it up. Let me go in there and try to fix it. And then for parents, let me be the one. Number one is student safety. Okay, if something goes on and if it's not safe, I'll pull that student immediately. But if there's something going on, communicate it with me. Let me work on it. And then for some reason, if I can't fix it or if it's not good, we'll pull a student. Today, in fact, there's one young lady who's out of sight. She has 3 more times that she's going to be going. She came to me, and we've really kind of worked hard. She's kind of bounced around because it hasn't been a perfect fit. And she kind of told me that it started off really good, but in the last 3 to 4 weeks, it seems like she's doing a lot of sitting and watching. And her supervisor has made the comment, hey, just use this as a study hall. You can work on anything that you need to. Well, she sent me that this morning, and I said, you know what? Let's just stop this right now. We kind of moved her. She's going to do something to finish the next 3 days because I don't want that to be a waste of her time, that her parents have to take her to the site and her to go sit and use it as a study hall. That's not called for. And so I tell them, you have to communicate that with me. I can't fix it. I can't do anything if you don't talk to me. And so they learn that. Now, attendance, I think we talked about that. It's crucial. You have to communicate with me. One, you need to be there. You need to make sure you can be there if you're physically able. Even if the student is not being paid, there are so many positives that can come from work experience. One, many students, they don't have work experience, so this is something they can kind of get exposed to what it's really like. You are gaining work experience. You're networking. I hope that at the end of the semester or end of the year, you've got 1 or 2 people at that job site that could be used as a reference, which is very valuable and sometimes can be hard to come by. Sometimes that student or that person may be able to write a letter of recommendation, which is always good. And in some cases, it turns into. Students will intern the entire year, and it may turn into a little part-time job. Or students come back from college, and it becomes something more. And if we can get you something, believe me, I'll go to bat for you and try to get you a paying position if it's there and if you have the skills to do it, okay? Transportation, we talked about this one. This one's got to be a must. We got to make sure that it's dependable. I've had students lose their placement because it wasn't dependable. Okay, so we got to just make sure that transportation is set. Student behavior. What I want to say about this is, I'm expecting all students to model professional behavior on the job site. On the job site's typically not the issue, because they're going to go and they're going to be around professionals, and they're going to sometimes be a little intimidated. They're going to act right on the job site. But in work-based learning, I'm expecting you to act right here in the halls of RCA, here at the halls at your home school, because you are representing work-based learning. You had to apply to get in. I checked everybody's discipline. And believe me, I turn away people. If you're not going to be a good representative of work-based learning, then you don't get accepted for the program. So I just tell students professional behavior. All right? Work-based learning communication. We've already talked about the texting part of it. The students will not lack for information. One thing I want to show you, if I can get it to pop back up. Okay. How many of you are familiar with the Rockdale Virtual Campus? Anybody taking a class through Rockdale Virtual? Okay. Rockdale Virtual Campus, this is our system's method of delivering online courses. So if you, and something that may be taking place, you may, before you graduate, may want to take an online course. There's a lot of online courses being offered. Can you shut that door, please? This right here is really just an online course. Huh? If you want to, yes. This is our work-based learning course. Everything, documents, information, deadlines, everything that you could possibly need, I will post here on RVC. The student will be given an account. They can access this through the internet anywhere they're at. When I first started, I would take all this information and put it on a CD, which was great, but I don't know how many times I had to replace it. This is always here. And for some reason, if the student forgets their password, we can get it reset and there go. Okay, so everything's here. Now, a new feature to this, and this was told to me by Dr. Arnold, who's in charge of all of our online classes. In the fall, students will be able to access this and do their work and upload stuff and do everything they need to. But in the fall, parents will be given access to view what's on this course. And so that way you have a way to kind of stay in the loop too. So this is one way that I give out information. It's always here. This is the best feature of RVC, of the work-based learning course. I can go, right now I'm logged in as me, I can go to participants and I can see when students last logged in. So I can tell when they're viewing. Miss Lindsay Smith, she was on about 26 minutes ago. She's logged on. And a lot of them are working because our exam, our little portfolio is due on Friday. So I can see that all these students have been logging in today trying to do work. And so what I'll do is every so often I'll go in, and anybody that hadn't logged on in about 2 weeks, I'll send them a little email and say, hey, just a reminder, hey, I'm watching, And again, this is for their information. This is everything that they'll need. So this.
Is there a duration of time they spent online?
It'll just put the last time that they logged in.
Okay.
Okay, so this person's logged in about an hour ago. Okay, so it's not how long, just the last time.
Yeah, I noticed somebody was on like 22 hours or wow.
No, that was just 22 hours ago.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So you can see these are just resources, things, handbook, all this stuff that's here. And then in April the 11th or 12th, that was the last time I met with everybody as a group. This was the agenda for our meeting. And so I put this up there. And these are the things that we talked about. These were some of the activities we did in class. I taught the students how to do a resignation letter.
Have your resignation letter?
Yes, ma'am. And so we talked about the reasons why you use a resignation letter. So all throughout the year, they're getting work experience, but I'm trying to go over and we're covering things, employability skills. That's the way work-based learning used to be delivered. When I first started teaching work-based learning, I had each student in a class every day. I had them in the morning, in the afternoon they went to work. I like that model because I got to see them and I got to talk to them. And so that's one thing that I miss. So anytime I can have some face-to-face with them, I'll take it because I feel like they miss out on that. So, but I taught them how to do a resignation letter, and basically I gave them a template and they had to then go in and tweak it and then save it, and then I'll say, now you have a sample. If you ever need one, you have it, then you can go back and use it. And we'll do the same thing with a resume, cover letter. All the work type documents, we'll go through and do those. This was just a program, a contact questionnaire. Every spring, we have kind of an intern and an apprenticeship banquet. These are the things, and we met and we talked all about this. We talked about what they were for. We recognized all the students. These were the invitations. Everything was there. I actually printed invitations and handed them an invitation. This is the exam. Goes over everything. Very detailed instructions. This is about a 3-page document that goes slide by slide what to put on there. So the information is here. Time cards, everything that they would need is right here. Second semester assignments, these are things that we've kind of worked through and done. These are chances, these are things that they can omit. So everything they need is right here. Journals, everything. So this is always, they always have access to this. I will send weekly emails to students. I'm also blind copying parents. I'm sending text to students, sometimes individually, sometimes group text. So they will not lack for information. And something that we've kind of done over the last few years, and I'm going to try to do more of this next year, is that I'm going to try to 3 times in the fall have 3 separate kind of afternoon meetings and trying to gather up the work-based learning students as a group and then bring in like an outside speaker, somebody from an HR firm, somebody to talk on different topics. This year, with the help of my video intern, we tried to put together some little things. We interview people, and they talked on such things as social media in the workplace and things like that, different employability topics. And so we kind of put together some little videos, but I'm going to try to pull in the students, probably do 3 times in the fall, probably twice in the spring, and then have it like an hour meeting, video the meeting so if the student can't attend, then they're responsible for getting the information. So that's another way I can give information. Parents, for you, this meeting is one of the first ways that I will give information. So you kind of have an understanding of the program. I'll also give you emails, and then you'll be given a chance to look at RVC. Okay, and as we get to that, I'll share it with you. And then employers, they're contacting me. I'm emailing them also weekly. They're filling out evaluations, their time cards, and I'm also going to visit. And some of them I'll go visit, very, very often. Some of them, they might get 2 to 3 visits a year. So, and it kind of depends on their availability. Sometimes I'll go visit the student and see the student at the job site, and I don't necessarily talk to their main supervisor because their supervisor may be busy. And sometimes I'll go visit. I have learned I can always see, and I can see more people in the morning. A lot of times before their day gets busy. So a lot of times before I'll go visit the job site, I can see more and talk to more people before 10 o'clock before the student gets there, just to see how things are going. But I do like to visit when the student's there. That gives me a chance to see the student in action, and they really like for me to see them in action. And so I take a lot of photos. We use photos of students for all types of promotional things. We'll make videos. With the help, this year I had a graphic design intern and I had a broadcast video intern, and we created all sorts of things. Okay. And then recognitions. You kind of saw us talk about a couple of the banquets. I'm a firm believer. I like to recognize students. We'll do Students of the Month. We will have banquets and receptions, and we honored and recognized each student. We gave each student a certificate. This year I did something completely different. My graphic design student kind of created kind of a logo brand, and we had that turned into a pin that each student got a pin that they could wear during graduation. And so that's just a way that they can be identified for being part of work-based learning. Before I came to RCA, I worked with graduation at Heritage, and students, high school students, they want to wear the cords and the stoles and all those things. And so I wanted to give them a way that they could be identified for being in work-based learning. So that was something that new we started doing this year. There's chances that the students can earn a certification through the Department of Labor. Each year they can earn that certification. That's to kind of help increase their chances for interviews as they go forward. Last year we were a pilot school. I was asked to nominate my best student who earned that certification, and she actually went on and won a $1,000 scholarship from the Department of Labor. So there's opportunities for scholarships. Last year I had 32 students earn certifications. This year I had 53. And really because we started at the beginning of the year saying this is what you can do, they met all the requirements, and I just turned over their names to the Department of Labor. So they'll be earning a certificate from the Department of Labor. So in this job market, anything you can do to increase your chances to put something on your resume, I highly encourage the students to do that. So that is the kind of the recognition. Now, what's next for what's next for work-based learning? I would say parents, go home and talk to your children and say, do you feel like you can meet all these requirements? If so, then we will continue on. If you feel like you cannot, shoot me an email and just say, I'm sorry, I don't think he can do it or she can do it, and we'll get their schedule changed. It's like I say, it's easier to do it now than if we wait till the fall. So I'm going to slowly start working through the programs and working on placements. As I get to each program, then I'll be contacting the student. I may call them, I may email them, I may email their instructor and say, hey, send them to my office, or when do you have them? I may come see them in the classroom. And we may just kind of talk about what kind of placement they want. Okay, so that's what's next for work-based learning. So basically, I wanted you to know kind of all the expectations, all the requirements. I'm hoping that everybody wants to continue, and we'll start working on placements real soon. So do y'all have any just general questions or specific questions? Yes, ma'am.
I have a general question about the average 5 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
5 hours a week.
Yes, ma'am, 5 hours a week. And the reason I say average is if they are just going during their period, on a Tuesday, Thursday, they may only get 3 hours that week. But then the next week, when they go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, then they'll jump back up there. And so it'll average over the course of the year. On hours, a lot of the students are involved in other activities. Maybe their hours may be a little low during their season. I've had students play all types of sports, band, marching band, all that. When that season's over, sometimes their hours pick back up, and they know that, okay, I need to get more hours, and maybe they stay in, an hour or so extra each week, and they get caught back up. They just need to have a certain amount of hours by the end of the semester, and they know that up front. They know where they need to get. Okay. Well, that goes back to the student, and they need to communicate with the student. Had a young man, he's a second-year work-based learning student, has worked for, it used to be Solo, now DART. He was in the marching band, and marching band, I think, is one of the busiest groups because they practice all the time, and it goes back to the student, and he was good, and he worked hard, and he communicated, and they worked with him through that marching season. And as soon as that season was over, his hours jumped up, and they love him. And he's getting ready to graduate, and they hate to see him go. But again, I always tell the student, hey, if you're doing a good job, and he actually started a little bit over the summer. So he worked all summer, and they knew what kind of worker he was, so then they were really willing to work with him. So it goes back, but he communicates with them his schedule. Now, every time, he has a schedule change, he doesn't have to necessarily communicate that with me, but he's got to communicate that with them. And so it's worked well. So they understand, but you got to be up front and let them know what's going on. And I actually had one business that they basically told the student, you tell us when you can be here. we're open just about 24/7. You tell us when you can come and we'll let you come in. And so the student would go in and clock in and do his work, and they gave him independent projects to work on, and so.
So the opportunity to work on the weekends?
If there are, the student can. Typically, the only students that would work on the weekends if they were getting paid, but there could be opportunities. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
What about dual enrollment? If you're interested in doing dual
Okay.
enrollment?
I've had many students this year that are in dual enrollment. The way it works as far as scheduling, I don't think dual enrollment classes have been kind of set yet. That's going to kind of develop over the next few weeks. What I would say is figure out when those are going to be offered, look at your other classes you need to take, and then we'll fit in work-based learning with what's left. I mean, I had one young lady this year, she took 4 dual enrollment and 2 work-based. And so I have kind of a combination. So we can work with that. Good question. Any other questions?
Can, you mentioned, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Can the students go, once you determine the site, can they go visit the site prior to starting?
Sure, I think that would be appropriate. And what I have them to do, yes, they could do that. But one thing I do the first week of school is, and we'll do this as a class activity, I have the student, I give them their supervisor's email address, and I show them how to write a formal kind of professional email. Not just a, hey, what's up kind of stuff, but they almost have to kind of introduce themselves, and that's really kind of a professional writing sample. They actually will take that and put it in their portfolio. But they can. That is a good thing to do. It's a good thing to see where it is and get locations and know about how long it takes to get there, because I don't want students leaving here, rushing over there. I mean, we want them to feel comfortable. We want them to be safe and get there where they need to be.
Even in the summer, we can go and sit there for a couple minutes and, get acclimated.
And sometimes if we can go ahead and set up kind of maybe a little interview where they kind of feel comfortable. And sometimes the supervisor may, come in and give them a little tour. And yes, but that's very doable. We can do something like that. Yes, sir.
All the job places are actually in Hopdale County?
Most of them are. I have had students, because we are so close to like Stonecrest, I've had students there. In the past, I've had students go the distance, but they're the ones that have to travel on a regular basis. I only have to go visit, every couple of months. I've had students work at Southern Regional Hospital, and so they were going there a few times a week. I've had several work at Stonecrest. I've had some kind of work in Newton County. Had somebody work in Covington. So yes, it can be. Typically, we try to stay in Rockdale just for distance and gas travel. So we can. Great questions. If y'all don't have any others, and you might get home and something may come up, feel free to shoot me an email, give me a call. Even if we need to get together and have another meeting, that's okay. You let me know. If you want to continue, you don't need to contact me. But if you feel like you can't continue, shoot me an email. Okay? And we'll start working on placements. Just make sure you signed in. And I'll be contacting students. Check your emails, because if I may send out some general stuff, or it might be individual stuff, but just get back in touch with me. And so I can usually tell who's checking emails by the ones that are kind of reacting. And so thank you for coming, because this is one of the requirements. You got to attend before we go forward.